This prequel was released back in 2013, and although it received pretty solid critical reception alongside a more than respectable box office return, I've generally, purely anecdotally, believed it to be a bit overlooked, even somehow seen as some sort of animated black sheep in certain deranged discussions of which I've unfortunately been a part. And even though it isn't of this prestigious studio's elite ilk, a la Toy Story 3, Inside Out, and Monsters Inc., all three of which I've discussed on this channel, Monsters University is a wonderful little film. It's humorous, awesomely animated, and packed with both heart and a healthy amount of nostalgia. Speaking specifically of returning players, of course the iconic duo consisting of James P. Sullivan and Mr. Michael Wazowski, voiced by absolute cinematic legends John Goodman and Billy Crystal respectively, are back at the core of this monstrous tale. Monsters Inc. commences with the bluish purple and green pair being the best of pals, while the prequel commences with the two as strangers until they meet and are basically instantaneously opponents. So this story largely documents their collective emotional journey to becoming the best friends we see in the 2001 picture, which is undoubtedly an arduous, then remarkably rewarding one. Then there's the great Steve Buscemi, who vocally portrays the initially sweet and naive, ultimately slimy and sinister Randall Boggs. It's such a wonderful little touch, the fact that we get to learn the origins of the adversarial dynamic between Sully and Randall. The other returning monsters do so via fun, brief cameos. The entirely covered, therefore hilariously completely disguised Roz, thankfully, appears. Pixar veteran John Ratzenberger reprises his role of the eventually banished abominable snowman nearing film's end, whilst Waternoose, sporting an amazing fro, is momentarily featured. All the while, this flick truly is packed with new characters that are memorable and a ton of fun. We've got Squishy, one of the Uzma Kappa fraternity members. He's this cute little underdog whose sweet, heavy metal-loving mother houses her boys' fraternity brothers. Don Carlton is the middle-aged, rather wonder-bred but endearing member of the crew who develops a very funnily awkward romantic relationship with Sherry. Then there's the visually, physically very creative Art, voiced by Always Sunny's Charlie Day. This hilarious ex-convict is a complete and utter wild-card character. Other very notable vocal players in the picture include the great Helen Mirren, Alfred Molina, Aubrey Plaza, and Nathan Fillion. Now, much of the running time constitutes this fun, college-centric kind of buddy comedy. Not necessarily revolutionary or super inventive, but it is a heart-filled blast. But while many generic movies within this genre would simply conclude with Mike, alongside his Uzma Kappa brothers, winning the scare games, Monsters University takes a bolder route. Although there are multiple effectively depicted themes, as well as multiple characters prevalent to the execution of said themes, the crux of this narrative primarily rests on the ambitious Mike Wazowski, as he embarks on a grueling path, which he desperately hopes concludes with him becoming a professional scarer. We ultimately discover that OK's supposed victory was fraudulent. Sully rigged the final event of the scare games because he knew Mike didn't have it. Mike then enters the human world in an attempt to prove his ability, but is unsuccessful. Wazowski is forced to learn the heartbreaking lesson that no matter how hard you try, even if you do so for the entirety of your life, you may simply just be ill-equipped to be successful in your most desired field. That's not to say you can't be an absolute expert when it comes to something else. It's just tough to give up on a dream. The human world material constitutes my favorite portion of the picture. It's the part that feels most like the original, and the reason why is summed up in a perfectly delivered line from Sully. He honestly, vulnerably vents to Mike about his fear of failure, of not living up to the exceedingly high bar that is his father's legacy. Mike asks why he hadn't told him this before. Sully replies, because we weren't friends before. We're then given the most beautiful frame in the film. I'm referring to the wide shot, in which these newly established friends silently sit next to one another, staring out at this vast moonlit lake. What follows is the pair's thrilling return to the monster world. They're tasked with having to power the faulty transportive door with a collection of adult screams. The greatness behind this sequence is multifaceted. Firstly, this is an excellent excellent display of the immense strength behind this perfect Wazowski-Sullivan brains-brawn combination. Mike not only executes the detail-oriented, atmospheric elements of the plot, he also encourages Saul with some wise words about needing to embrace his individuality rather than obsessing about living up to his dad's legacy. This gives Sully the mental fortitude necessary to terrify these grown rangers, power that door, and return home. This movie is meaningful, it's really funny, it's colorful, it's highly accessible and relatable, and it's got a strong emotional core. I was so happy to see Goodman's Sully and Crystal's Mike back on the big screen after so many years, especially considering the iconic pair made their return as part of a worthy successor to truly one of my all-time favorites.